So it's it's 12:21 here in California. Uh Trying to collect my thoughts. So many things have happened since specifically yesterday and even through this morning. Having the most incredible conversations, linking information, and just trying to get some of these thoughts out because it's literally repeating in conversations I'm having with people all over the world, men and women, teenagers through people up into their 60s and 70s. So, um, trying to see if I can figure out this whole live thing, like wait for maybe a few people to show up at least before I launch into whatever the fuck is going to come out of my mouth. So, yeah, so many patterns are resolving. Ooh. Hey, Hannah. Oh my gosh. So many connections all over the world, and I'm making so many locally contacts I completely forgot I had. Some decades old, I'm re-encountering. Some only from like the last couple years, some from just meeting the last couple months to like just meeting last night. It has been amazing. My voice is a bit rough because I've actually been using it so much. I've gone out every single night to go sing at different karaoke places since Saturday. And I cannot believe the reaction I'm getting out there, the people I'm meeting, the people that are saying, like, just telling me that when they see, like, oh my gosh, I love your style, or like, wow, the vibe you give off. A woman a couple nights ago told me that I was giving off the most incredible Janis Joplin vibes. I couldn't believe it. I cannot believe what people have been saying to me, either from people from my past showing up to, it's just, I don't understand it, but it's amazing. And I just kind of wanted to share some things I'm learning, even because, again, whenever bad things happen, it's just like, oh my God, it happened again. Like, it really, I did see that coming. Why didn't I just follow my gut instinct? Like, I knew that was weird, but it's like, I'm that curious, it turns out. I'm constantly testing things. I'm just, I, I get too curious, way too curious. Like, oh, well, that seems kind of odd. But, a lot of that is just fine to do that. It's just, why can't you be curious? It's okay if it's like not good. It's like, well, there's something there to be learned. And I do have the tendency, unfortunately, to go right into something that hurts terribly bad, to be like, what is this? What's going on? Trying to, find some moderation in there. But found another couple of people, unfortunately, became, I discovered several people I connected to are, wow, incredibly, incredibly toxic. Did not see that coming, but then kind of realized I did. Finding the connections I make through them help crystallize that knowledge for me. But again, it's all about patterns, where you are in the process, what you're cycling in and out of, as we're all purging narcissistic wounds that we've received throughout life. Whether because you might be a true narcissist, or whether you're more like the empath that got stamped by the narcissistic abuse, so you're like functionally a narcissist in moments when you're like triggered or things like that. And then finding out that there are some people that have either caught on to that tendency in themselves really early on and already were starting to do the work, or people that turns out, like me, that I always thought I was the abuser. I always thought I was the bad person, and I just tried everything I could to like not hurt things around me. And it wasn't even that I necessarily cared about their opinion of me. I just wanted them to feel better. And I didn't know that, like, how bad I felt. I thought I felt bad because I'd done something bad to somebody or something. And learning that what I need to purge out is the fact that I'm not a dangerous, toxic person. That when I just act on instinct, or even like in panic, that what I do actually tends to diffuse things. The problem is I've diffused situations where I was actually being abused or victimized, or actually I've been told it's called torture, what happened. So But like, I didn't understand those things were happening, but that's also part of survival. That's how you get through. By not knowing what you went through at the time, you just get through it. But I'm finding more and more people that have had the craziest situations in life happening to them, whether they knew it or not at the time. Some of them are like me, just waking up to the fact that our entire life has been this pattern. Some people have maybe realized this like a couple years ago, and they've been working on this process for several years and just starting to really hit their stride afterwards. But it's just, we all hit these dynamics in life, and some of us noticed it sooner than others, and other people caught on sooner than others that, hey, that's actually, I didn't actually do that. That you said I did, but that's not actually what happened. So as people are learning that self-reflection is what's necessary to like gauge that, but some people like me, I've discovered I didn't have a self to view from, that I was already too spread out in my awareness and already outside of my body too much, that I never had a self established. And as I was trying to establish one growing up, especially in early childhood, that got denied me and forced out of me. And I just kept trying to see things from everyone else's side of point of view. But because it wasn't just with people, I tried to see like what the animal was feeling in relation to me. I tried to watch what happened with the plant when I accidentally stepped on it or something like that. I've always been engaging like that. I've always been watching the environment, but not really understanding my impact on it, but trying to. And so with that, I'm learning there are other people like me too, or that people had that, and like me, it got stamped out of them. But the way it got stamped out, some of us actually got nicer and nicer outwardly, and some people got like meaner and meaner outwardly. But it wasn't that they were that way at their base. And I truly want to believe, and I don't know, but like, I don't care if I know or not, I want to believe that everything, when it's starting to be formed as a life, that there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And it's just what came into it because of the environment, the energy, the mother, that like incubated it, whatever, gestated it. All of those affected it. But that because at its base form, the energy, when it comes in, it just is. I truly believe that everything can be redeemed, everything can be turned around, if there's conscious effort after getting some of this knowledge. I want to believe that nothing is beyond redeeming itself. And that maybe that's just what I want to hold on to. I don't care. I'm going to do that anyways. But I'm learning such fascinating things, especially around narcissists and how I seem to can't stay away from them. But I've also learned more about the Stockholm Syndrome trauma bond thing, and the fact that when people talk about, oh, well, you're attracting that, you must be attracting that. Well, yes, but it has to do with vibration. When they say like, oh, we'll raise your vibration, increase your frequency, all that stuff. Well, what a lot of people don't talk about, I do know there are people talking about it, but I don't think it's very widespread. When you do these things, the more you get into alignment with yourself, the more you put out that good energy, that higher vibration, it attracts, it's magnetic. It attracts things, not just the good things. It attracts the predators. It attracts the curious that don't know how to act yet. It attracts outside energy that aren't necessarily in physical forms. No, not many people warn you that if you do this work, you will go through the worst of people around you. But I also realize that is relative to how much happened to you in this particular life. And I'm finding out I've gone through way more than I ever imagined possible. And so that's why I guess I've always been considered advanced, even though I never thought I was advanced. I actually thought I was quite functionally stupid. Now learning, it turns out I am that person they describe as being so intelligent, so far ahead of everyone else that everyone thinks I'm slow or that I didn't understand the concept. Learning that what that has to do with finding out finally that I'm highly autistic, not just like, oh, on the spectrum. I'm like off the charts. And my sensory awareness is beyond anything like things I'd read about, you know, or that you see like in comic books, really. And I'm like, oh shit, I have that. But I didn't know it because that's all I've ever experienced. So learning I can talk about certain things now, I can either find other people like me, or when I talk about it, I can actually help people that didn't know they could do those things too, learn kind of how to do it or how to intuit that they're doing something similar. So I don't fully understand it, but as I learn things and as I'm learning to speak to it from my point of view, from my experiences, and maybe give some examples of conversations I've had with people, personal conversations with me, there's just, I can teach people while I'm learning somehow. And so I just have a lot of random thoughts, but so many conversations happen just in like the last 4 hours. I'm just like, amazing synchronicity everywhere. Serenity says, you are right, everyone can be redeemed, but some people can't seem to grasp that concept. They need to become self-aware and understand how it works, or at least try. Exactly. Yeah, without that awareness that it is possible, or even the introduction of the idea that it's possible, they don't know that they can go for it, you know. And if they don't ever even start to try, how are they going to ever get started in that process? And I'm learning for me that I never thought I could be redeemed. I took on the idea definitely by the age of 4, that because I was born, everything in existence was being destroyed. My internal concept of myself was a growing void, black hole. It just kept expanding as it was pulling things in, and I kept seeing basically like these golden lights and interconnecting lines, and they were being sucked in as it was growing, and all the lights were getting snuffed out, and it was just black. And I was terrified that this was happening because I was born. And so I was trying to wish for non-existence so that everything else could exist. That was just how I existed. It later turned into, by the time I heard about suicide for the first time, I think I was in first grade, and I was like, oh, that's what I need to do. But I also knew how hurt people are when those kind of things happen. I was like, I can't hurt other people by leaving like that. So that was my driving thing in life. And my entire life, I felt like I had been selfish for not doing it and being, to try and have just a few more moments of happiness and connection. Because I've also known how much I enjoy being here, how much I enjoy the animals and just being outside. Like, I know I like it here. And I've been terrified my entire life that I was destroying everything because I wouldn't leave. So, just to reassure everyone, I am not suicidal anymore. That got solved for me last year. But then I got nearly pushed into it again because of the psychological abuse and different things that were happening around me. But I know that I'm fine, and when I express emotions, it's a very healthy thing, because I have never been free to do that in my life, and I have locked away so much awareness of my own emotions and what that does to my body, and that is actually, it turns out, it was a survival technique, because I have been in danger whenever I express emotions. And I'm also learning that is something I never knew about. I didn't know I was an empath. I understood the concept, and I felt like other people were, and I just felt like there's no way I was, because I was, I must be really checked out since I upset people all the time. And it's because I didn't know. I was raised around abusive people. I didn't understand what happened to me. I didn't understand how bad it was that I was getting hit, or that hard, because I couldn't feel it. So I'm learning why it's good for me to know that now. Like, I don't talk about it because I'm dwelling on it, because I'm stuck on it. I'm like, it comes up for me a lot because I keep finding out as I go through my daily life now, something happens. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I'll think back, I'm like, oh, this happened before. But that's how flashbacks work. They're reminding you something that you're still confused on. happened again, or it's just like the reminder, like there's something you need to do about this. Look at it. The triggers are not bad. They are important. When you run from them, when you shut it down, when you just scream, at whoever you think triggered you, it's like, no, you needed to look at that. And if you don't go in and deal with that and manage yourself and try and match up, why did that image, why did that feeling show up right now? Sometimes it shows up because it's trying to tell you you're experiencing it all over again. Sometimes it shows up to show you that what you're looking at is almost identical, but it's actually showing you there's a contrast here. It reminds you of this time. It reminds you of this situation. It reminds you of this person. And that's not what's happening here. That's what you think is happening here. But look, lay them over each other. Find the differences that show you this just echoes a bad thing. Not because that's what it is. Other times it shows up to tell you, get the fuck away. This is dangerous. And I'm still learning how to discern that for myself. That is not something I know how to try and explain to somebody other than that as the concept that exists. But what so many people still don't tell you, but I'm finding people that I know are talking about this. When you do the work on yourself, as you improve for yourself, as you find yourself in alignment with your goals, your dreams, everything that you had in childhood before it got stamped out of you, aligning with that, finding your inner peace, your happiness. It's not necessarily to do with like a seated meditation where you empty your mind. It's not about emptying your mind. It's about letting go of the thoughts and the words dictating your actions and your behavior. It's about allowing anything to go in and out and noticing things without judgment while you're in motion doing something else, because motion is circulation, it's energy. When you're sitting, you're stagnant, really. But people can take that as a conscious effort. Okay, if my body's restricted, how do I keep the energy moving in my body? How do I keep the circulation of my blood? How do I the breathing, the inhale, the exhale, the exchange, that interacts with the environment around you. Oh, thank you, Serenity. I feel like I'm just babbling all the time. But so with that energy exchange, so much is, yes, it can be completely assisted by sound. That vibration absolutely works as like a perfect medium. But you don't actually even need to emit a sound to emit a frequency or a vibration. So I'm learning about, and it's also funny because it is highly intuitive, quantum energy healing. And I'm linking that to a lot of sound things and sound therapy, so like the singing bowls. But you can basically turn your body into a singing bowl. And you don't, like, that can be done through like humming, that could be done through breathing, that could be done through vocalization, that can be done through, there's ways you can link visualization to the physical sensation of energy in your body. There's so much that can be done. But that's more for like if your body isn't able to work, for health reasons, physical, emotional, whatever it is that's locking you up, or you are, say, like actually locked up in like a prison setting or some other way like that there are ways you can still create movement within that contained space. And that's a way you can combat the feeling of being trapped. But also there are times when you need to realize you actually have to get up and move your body. That's why things like dancing or just expressing, emoting are so important. But so what I'm learning with singing is that it is the vibration of my voice, that I'm actually healing myself when I'm vocalizing, because it puts in a vibration internally, but it also puts out a vibration externally. And I'm finally learning that a lot of people really, really love my voice, which is baffling to me because I spent my entire life thinking my voice was one of the worst sounds in the world. But I'm also learning that my hearing is way different because of, what this country calls autism, but like, there's words in other older indigenous cultures for it. My sense of hearing that doesn't just go through my ears, I'm picking up sounds that I didn't know other people literally cannot hear. But I'm also learning how many people can feel them on certain levels, whether or not they realize it until there's a bit of a discussion. Um, but so when I go out and I sing in public, it's a huge deal because the sensory overload from the sound of the speakers, the sound of my voice through a microphone, the awareness of that many people looking at me and being able to hear me terrifies me so bad. But I know why I'm doing it. I know I want to get better at this. I know that's me facing the fear that was put upon me, that the way I look, the way I sound, the way I behave is just the worst thing in the world, and I have to be isolated in my room to stop bringing people down because I don't know like how to not impact my environment negatively. I'm learning that it is actually the opposite, and that's why some people react so strongly to my voice, because they can't accept that energy or what I'm saying, especially when I have an emotion in it, and especially if it's at odds with what they think they're doing. So people hear judgment, they hear ridicule, they hear like disdain, contempt, rejection. They think I've actually been told, I don't even know how many times in this past year, that I'm being violent with my words because I was just saying like, hey, like you keep doing this thing, like that's not okay. And they don't realize the way they're talking, the way they're emoting, that if I talk like this, they can't hear me. And if I talk like this, they can't hear me. So I have to talk like this, and then all of a sudden they're like, why are you shouting at me? I'm like, you didn't hear that you had escalated in volume. I tried. So I know that I'm emitting sound. And I've never understood why other people would say things like, stop sneaking up on me. I'm like, I'm not. I'm trying to activate sound in the area to alert you that I'm there. Well, now I know it wasn't going to work. One, because I was around people that were that dissociated. Two, because the way I hear and feel sound, other people cannot yet. There are some people that do have senses like mine, it turns out. But by and large, humans don't seem to have these abilities right now, but they will open up. But the thing is, if they open up without anyone telling you what's going on, it is terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. And I don't think enough people warn you about the flip side of going into a spiritual or awakening process or whatever, going into plant medicines, going into certain types of meditation, going into certain types of like induced trance work, or certain types of like hypnotic type stuff, whatever, that they don't realize what you're necessarily going to unlock, and that you may not know that kick out that feels so horrible is actually necessary. But if you're not with the right kind of person who understands these concepts and isn't taking advantage of those vulnerable moments when you're completely open to suggestion and comfort, and can get basically taken over and brainwashed by very insanely beyond abusive and just rapey bastards in the spiritual community. So the thing with like narcissists and empaths, right? We end up always grouping together, and I found out through like psychologists that I had been working with that narcissists and empaths are born out of the same narcissistic abuse. And I'm learning how many empaths can take on the appearance of a narcissist just because they're basically displaying the example that they were modeled. Not that they want to behave that way, but they weren't shown any other way to behave. So that can be addressed relatively easily if one can trace back like where the behavior came from and why and that. But people, when they open up that kind of thing, they need more support. Like when they do like, you know, a half hour, an hour appointment with, you know, a psychologist, therapist, some sort of practitioner, that is not enough. Like once a week, that amount of time, do not open up people to that kind of stuff, and then like schedule them, like basically the doctor is 15 minutes here, there. It needs to be a very solid supporting connection, and it needs to be followed up on quite regularly, unless, you know, some groundwork wasn't laid before they started going into that thing. And I'm also learning how many people encounter plant medicines and things like that, and they don't realize what's going to happen if they take other substances into their body just prior to or just after that experience. Because each time you take one of those journeys with a plant medicine, you are actually opened up even more. Your senses are broader, more things are coming in. And because you raised your vibration, you attracted more of like the type, like energy vampire kind of things, you know. So you don't realize what you're inviting in. And if you add other substances like alcohol, because that works completely at odds with medicines, I feel like it's different when it's made in like a tincture form. Like I feel like alcohol still can be used medicinally, but that's not the way people drink it. So, but I'm finding out how many people aren't actually told what's going to happen if they go out drinking or they're around people who are drinking after they've been opened up by these medicines. And then they think, you know, like, now life has become scary and it's overwhelming, and they don't know why they just did what they did, and they don't know why this person turned on them. It's like, it's because you're now being shown the sickness around you. So when people say like, oh, well, you know, you keep repeating this pattern, like you must be attracting this. Well, right there, that's a narcissistic statement, because they're making it out to be a problem. It's victim blaming. And because they're not attracting it like, yeah, I come in like I'm only making these bad decisions. No, those show up with the true people. But by and large, most of the true people, the lives we've had, we're very hesitant to be clear with someone why we reached out. Because of the way we've been treated when we acted on our intuition, or acted on trying to communicate with somebody. So it's that some people now are getting excellent advice. They're finding the true people too, but they keep defaulting to the older people because they don't realize like why they still have this friendship, but they didn't realize it was toxic the entire time. They don't know that yet. They default to their own patterns because they don't realize they have to do things very, very differently now, if only to just find the contrasting action to see what happens as a result. So it's just when certain things just keep matching up, when you keep seeing number of things everywhere, and it's not just the repeating numbers, different number patterns. If you just see something like, I don't know, for me, when I see number patterns, they frequently just make me smile or laugh for some strange reason. Don't know the significance of it whatsoever. People tell me about it, like with other definitions like angel numbers or things like that, or metaphysics or sacred geometry, and that's actually really cool. Sometimes it really resonates, sometimes it doesn't, but that's the thing, kind of finding it for yourself, but also finding how many people vibe with that feeling, realizing that, you know, if you're really observant and you seem to see things that most people don't, there are other people like us, but then there's also other people that can talk as if they see those things, but it turns out they got that information from people like us. So again, with the narcissists, I'm finding out actually that a lot of them think that they're the empaths. And my gut instinct on that is that they were born an empath and they just got stamped that hard. But I actually, turns out, I can't really recognize what people consider a true narcissist, because I can't stop falling for like the surface good thing. And I'm learning how to read more energy around that, instead of just like, wow, that's so nice, and just assuming that people mean it when they say nice things or like kind things, not realizing they learned word patterns and vocabulary from the empath. So the narcissist mask like an empath, but yeah, it turns out they are empathetic. I think I've heard it described like intellectually or cognitively. So they can think, they can imagine, they can see how, yeah, that would be really painful. That would hurt somebody, that would damage them. Hey, Pauline. But they're not feeling how bad it hurts. They're not acknowledging it's going to cause pain to somebody else. They're just like, yeah, I'm sure that hurt. But whereas an empath was like, oh man, that must have really hurt. It's different. And so I'm learning that I can cognitively or intellectually grasp the concept of people who do just go out and take advantage of people on purpose. But I actually can't remember that when I'm interacting with people unless something becomes so obvious at fairly early on, or that I just keep noticing these little funny hints, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, got it. Pattern recognition suddenly clicks in, and all of a sudden, all the examples of things they've done to me or within my being being able to witness what they're doing to other people around me, and not understanding, like, well, why did they do that? Well, that seems weird, because I'm sure that other person didn't mean it that way. Why did they just take it that way? Well, it turns out I've been watching Narcissism, and the way they'll twist somebody else's words or personalize something. Well, I always thought I took everything personally, but it turns out that was the narcissistic projection, because they would say things to me specifically, and they were judging and they were shaming. And when I, gave my opinion of why I thought it was, wasn't a bad thing, then they act like I'm getting defensive, and then they're like, I couldn't tell you before because, you take everything so personally, and like, I knew you'd get upset. And I was like, you knew I'd get upset, so you didn't say anything until you blew up and did it in a way that you're screaming at me and insulting me with really fucked up things. Like, yeah, that was really glad you decided not to upset me all those other times. But, like, I don't get upset like that. Yes, the covert narcissist. So I'm specifically learning how damaging the covert narcissist is, specifically when their main thing is passive aggressiveness. And whether or not it's like a technical narcissist versus what I'm learning is called like the cluster B diagnoses. So like the borderline personality disorder, I think, is in there too, and like this schizophrenia, or I've read so many new diagnoses names, and the way they're redoing things, I can't keep up with them. But yeah, so it's the passive aggressiveness is so psychologically damaging. I used to call it, like, somebody was like, yeah, they're a master of the backhanded compliment. So on the surface, it'll sound like they're complimenting you, but somehow you just feel like you just got backhanded across the face or sucker punched in the stomach. You're just like, oh, what? Like, I was happy right there, and then you finished the statement, I'm like, wow, is that what you think I'm doing? Like, oh my God. And it's just, I'm learning how it's that smugness that I'm now realizing, oh my God, that's entitlement. Which is, another word for that would be like, or synonymous with it would be like privilege. And I'm learning specifically the patterns around me from growing up in the United States, and now realizing I've been treated like a foreigner here my whole life, because I never knew why not everyone, but a lot of people ask me, where are you from? I was like, here. Like, no, like, where were you from originally? It's like, here. And they're like, no, like, where did you come from before here? I'm like, my mom? And it's just like, what do you mean by that? Well, it turns out what they meant was, I don't look American. So I know sometimes people would actually say, like, what are you? Sometimes they were referring to what I now realize is ethnicity. They would say things like nationality. But, it's like, when I was little, because the way I was taught to say those words by both sides of my family, I would say, I'm half Oriental and I'm half Caucasian. Well, there's a whole lot behind that. But I've also had people then shout at me, well, why don't you just say you're American? I'm like, well, if we're both American, why did you ask me where I'm from? Like, or when people hear my name, or they hear something else I've said and they realize, I'm Japanese, they'll say things like, oh, so you were born there? I'm like, What? Do I sound do I sound like I was brought up in Japan? Like, no. Turns out though I can speak and enunciate Japanese a lot like a native, but that has to do more with my hearing and the way I patterned to it when I was a small child around my Japanese grandparents and their community. But it's I didn't know I was being treated like a foreigner here because to me, I'm like, I have a white dad. I'm half white. Of course, like everyone here is mixed because, yeah, there are white people here. But then there's also people that are completely not. And then there's people like me that are half and half and all this other stuff. But I was born in the 80s here, in California, where most people around the world think it's so fabulous and we're so liberal and we're so like accepting here. I'm like, no, the racism here is insanely extreme and it masquerades as, inclusiveness, which they then turn around into infighting and like, oh my God. But also learning how many people now are that they know I'm trying to learn all this stuff, whether they're new to me or they've known me for decades. So like, yeah, you never came across as white. Or like, in comparison to my sister, I didn't understand. I later as I was growing older, I would see articles and things about how in mixed race families, like some of the siblings can look like one parent or the other, but they didn't look like each other. They almost looked like, like black and white copies of each other in a way. And I didn't realize that's the case with me and my sister. There's a reason why I get the darkest in the family when I'm exposed to sun. I didn't understand the differences and the features between me and my sister. But now that I'm realizing why I always hated my reflection and what I was doing to imagine being able to grow up and have plastic surgery, I was trying to rewrite my features. I was trying to rewrite my features to look like my sisters. And I didn't understand that I was trying to rewrite my features so I looked more like a white person here. So I've actually been told by several people, and some of them, like I said, brand new, some of them know me for a long time. They're like, yeah, you don't have white features, and it's just now I know why people around the world ask me where I'm from because they don't realize when I say like my hometown is San Jose, California, like, yeah, I'm still here. I was born here. That's not where I wish I was. I'm not living somewhere else in the world. I've had people from the Middle East think I'm Middle Eastern. I've had, people think I'm like, more like possibly North African. I've had people think I'm, possibly like East Indian. I've had people think I'm Native American. I've had people think I'm, from different regions in South America. I've had people think that I'm Polynesian, but I'm also finding out that, like, yeah, even though my mom's family is Japanese, there is a bloodline tied, mitochondrial DNA through Okinawa or Ryukyu that I now know that's an indigenous First Nation people that were assimilated by the Empire of Japan back in like the late 1800s. I pulled genetically almost only Okinawan or Ryukyuan genetics from my mom. I am the genetic throwback. And I'm also finding how many people I know that are, the black sheep in their family, but sometimes if they're a dark-skinned family, they're the one with the lighter coloring, but they're the one that actually was more in tune with everything else. So I'm learning how many, when people say like, oh, not all men or like not all white people, I'm like, yeah, I fucking know that. I've never said that as a blanket statement. So, thank you, Pauline. Yeah, like to be honest, I actually now think it's really cool when people from different regions or countries or whatever tell me like, oh, like I love your nose or like, your mouth or like, your eyes are like mine, and I look at them, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Or I see people that, know their ethnicity from one region, but I'm like, wow, you actually remind me of my friend that's from this country. And so I actually love seeing the differences in the features so I can match them up to other people I know. But like, it was more that I didn't know because I thought I was white. I thought I looked white because I knew I didn't fit in with Japanese people. As much as I wanted to, I didn't fit in. And now I know it's because my features are Okinawan, Ryukyuan, they are not Japanese. When people think I look Japanese or even think I'm full Japanese, it's because they are actually recognizing the Okinawan or Ryukyuan features that got mixed into the Japanese population, like what they call an admixture. But I'm also finding out like why so many people would think I'm, Native American or South American, or because they say that they feel certain things from me. Like I feel very grounded. I feel very, spiritual. And like I never knew I was talking about anything spiritual until very recently. I was just like, I don't know why people keep saying talk about spirituality. It's like I'm just talking out of my ass here. um, but I'm finding out again like how many of the similarities. So it's the way I am actually very happy underneath it all, even if people think I look sad or whatever. But I also found out that my emotions are completely opposite unless I'm in the moment, and then I'm freely emoting. But even then, I don't always know that my features are showing the opposite of what I feel, or that people will interpret it in the opposite fashion. Um, and I'm learning also that has to do with certain behavior patterns that one can observe when they study either history or different ethnic groups. That there's different things I do. Like sometimes I'll point. I'm just like, like basically like point with my chin or something like that, or like flick my eyes and expect somebody to be realizing where I'm looking. I don't know where I've got these things, but I've always like seen them either maybe sometimes in like movies or like read about descriptions like that in books when people are describing like not white people generally. But that's all relative, because when people also talk about, an indigenous race or culture, most people seem to now default into thinking that means like brown or, whatever, or black or something. But they, like, most people don't seem to really talk about the indigenous, cultures that are white skinned. But that's the thing. It's like, it has nothing to do with your skin color, because every dark skinned, race or ethnicity has, gradations of like dark to light. And at this point around the world, it's almost all defaulted into preferring the lighter skinned. And that's, I kind of understand that, mostly don't, but like whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with your skin color. It's, are you in tune with the environment around you? Do you pay attention to the plants and the animals? Do you feel the elements or hear them? Are you aware of them? Do you realize how you impact the environment around you? Are you observant? Are you understanding dynamics? Are you seeing how things aren't necessarily the way they appear? How good are you at seeing below the surface? And that's the thing, like that kind of depth is not any, like, see you later, Pauline. It's not any relation to the way you look. It's the way you feel. It's the way you interact with things. It's the way you're just aware. And I'm learning how that is the difference between like the feeling and the thinking. And that the narcissist is better at the thinking and analyzing, and the empath is better at the feeling. Maybe not even necessarily analyzing. Some of us are better at acknowledging our intuition than others. I'm learning to follow it more. But it's just, the narcissist doesn't always know they're the narcissist. It's not always conscious. I'm finding out how many of them actually seem to believe they are the empath. And that, I didn't realize like that they actually do focus on all the bad things that happen to them. Because just because I'm talking about something that somebody else thinks is bad, I'm talking about it because it came up for me right now. I don't think about this shit all the time. Even if it comes up out of my mouth frequently, I'm not realizing it would come out of my mouth frequently around certain people, because I didn't realize they would ask me questions, or what they were doing would make those memories come up. But they don't. Yeah. Anyways, I feel like I kind of rambled on and lost my thread, but that's pretty normal. But okay, yeah. Oh, right. Talking about synchronicities, raising the vibration. So, like, really, easiest way to raise your vibration is to actually be happy. Find things that make you laugh. Like, that is my go-to for everything in life. And I love to make other people laugh, or smile, especially when I can shock them into it. Like, that's the best feeling ever. But I'm also learning like how much I will laugh anyways, like regardless of anyone else is laughing with me. I will be that asshole that laughs alone in the movie theater at a part when everyone else would want to look at me like, you're a sick bastard. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that was funny in the weirdest way. It's just, never mind. But I'm also finding out how many people will laugh with me at those fucking moments. And I'm just like, thank God for that shit. But also within that, like, just finding things that make you happy. So when you get into that, like, really happy, like, enjoyment, like, oh my God, this is so cool, that mode, like, that raises your vibration, your frequency already. Because people also don't realize that can be its own cardiovascular exercise. Like, that enjoyment, the laughing, that's breathing, that's getting your heart rate up, that's getting the circulation going, especially if you're emoting and moving while you're doing it. I didn't realize why people say my laughter is like infectious or contagious, because mine's so spontaneous, and I don't care how I sound or look. Like, it frequently comes out sounding like Eddie Murphy or like goofy or like a like, I don't know. It just comes out. I giggle, I cackle. I've been told I have a very excellent like cartoon villain laugh. Like, I would make a great like mad scientist or whatever. Or that I've got a really sinister dark laugh, or that when I make a certain kind of little chuckle that people know instantly I had a very, very naughty thought, because I love innuendo and wordplay. And so people that can laugh like that, especially when you can find a very odd way to laugh or smile while thinking about something actually pretty bad, you're finding something within that. Even if it's just like, yeah, I fucking knew it. Like, can't believe, yep, fucking did that shit again. You know, even if it's like self-laughter, like, that is so healing. And if you let that out, and like, yeah, and if people get mad at you, like, dude, that's, if they're not willing to understand that you have a different way of thinking or feeling, that's on them. They're probably not somebody you want to hang out with very often. But if you find yourself doing that, and then, you know, I'll frequently laugh at the wrong moments, and then sometimes I've made a louder sound slapping myself in the face to cover up the laugh. But in that moment, people look, and then I sometimes would see like, you know, like, yeah, I caught that too. I'm trying not to laugh over here. That I know why you just cracked up, kind of thing. And it's like, I should talk to them later. So finding people that also know how to have fun, especially during bad moments. And people that will let you talk about that and kind of sit with you for a bit. And I didn't realize like why I offer that to people. And turns out, while that's incredibly healing for people that are going through, you know, narcissistic wounds, like trying to heal their inner child, like all of that stuff, that is very healing for an empath, it turns out. Turns out for a narcissist, that's really like a massage of their ego, because I still constantly can't remember what the concept of ego is supposed to even mean, because it's just not important to me. But I accidentally build them up because I don't realize they're not telling me the full story. Well, I mean, I always know people are never telling me the full story, but I don't require it either. But I don't realize like how easily I get suckered by somebody who won't give an accurate accounting of what they've done in the dynamic, and how many of times a narcissist will describe someone else, whether they say the term narcissist, but the way they describe the way someone's interacting with them will make the other person look completely like a narcissistic abuser, taker, energy vampire. Well, it turns out sometimes the people they describe like that are absolutely not doing that at all. Sometimes those are people that are actually holding them accountable, and they see that as, you know, being like a narcissistic abuser from their past. So, you know, just, this has probably been way longer than I meant to. But it's, the raising your vibration absolutely is necessary. As you do it, the happier you'll get. And and the thing about gratitude, let me just say that real quick. When someone tells you, well, you know, be thankful, I was like, fuck you. Don't obligate me to be thankful because you think I should. If I haven't found it on my own, it's not going to mean anything. If you told me to do it and I did it just because you told me to, like, fuck off. Because if I'm thankful, like, I don't need someone to tell me. Like, I was thankful already. You don't know me. Apparently, you needed to be told that at some point. Apparently, you ran into somebody else that like, oh, well, it really helped this other person when I told them that. And it's just like, well, okay, great. I'm not that other person. I was grateful this whole time. I finally started talking about something I hadn't known before. It actually, I'm grateful to have learned this. I'm grateful to get out of it. I'm grateful for all of this. I always was. I always thought I had it better than most people. And I thought I was a whiny little shit because I felt bad a lot. Because I was like, no, I know I have it better than other people. Like, why do people tell me, these things? It was like, well, because they didn't fucking know me. They weren't trying to. And because those were my parents and my older sister and a bunch of the other people around me, I didn't know that because I thought my sister, did like me. I thought she was my friend. I didn't know why she beat me up so much. I didn't realize she was so dangerous. I didn't know my mom was so dangerous. I didn't understand I was being brainwashed. I didn't, understand how sick they were. I didn't understand, how checked out my dad was. I didn't understand how racist my dad is. I didn't understand how that affected me at home, witnessing domestic violence, having it, done to me. I didn't know this was that bad. I knew some people had it better than that, but I also thought that people had it way worse. And so I was just thankful that it wasn't that bad for me. And I used that as a reason to be nicer to kids at school, not realizing I trained myself to be nicer and more accepting of the bullies that I didn't understand. Because I've always known somehow that what turns out to be bullies or abusers, they were hurt before. Either because, the lack of sleep, that they had a hard day at work, that, they had a problem with a friend of theirs, that they had a problem with another member of someone else in my household, or something happened to them in the way past. I always knew something else had happened to them, and that's why they were so out of sorts right now. And so I made every excuse for them without even knowing what I was excusing. Because it turns out I cannot feel pain the way other people do. And it turns out other times I actually can't feel anything at all. And I'm learning that that is not unique to me either, but it's not necessarily all that common. But that there's instances of it, and it has to do with mental awareness and your awareness of being inside your body. But anyways, just there's all these things, and and the raising your vibration and your frequency, that is absolutely electric. That is energetic. That's why, some of us are having disruptions with actual electronics and things like that around us. And why we're the static electricity is so bad. But as you do that, you become more electromagnetic. So you are literally attracting things to you, whether or not they know why they're attracted to you. It is an energetic thing. It can be transmitted through voice. It can be transmitted through picture, through words, through text. It's just the energy is being conveyed, and it will attract both the predators and the true connections. So you are not doing anything wrong when all these things come back out at you, or all these people start turning on you. That's actually strangely the sign that you are getting more in alignment, that you are increasing your frequency or your vibration, that is the right thing to do. That's why it's exposing all the things around you that are bad for you, that have been mistreating you, whether somebody you've been friends with for decades or your whole life, or a family member, and you never realized, oh my God, this is why I always, end up feeling bad or confused whenever I'm done visiting them or something. It's trying to show you it's dangerous to you. But again, other times it's trying to show you that it reminds you of this person, but what's going on right now is actually different, and it's showing you that pattern to get you to see why it's different, and that you don't need to feel like you're in that same situation anymore. And other times it's telling you, when you don't think it matches, no, this is what's going on dynamically. Look at the dynamics, learn the patterns. So as you go through this process, the more healing you do, actually the worse you're going to feel for a bit. There's this thing called a healing crisis. As things start to take effect, because your body got so used to existing in such a dysfunctional state, as it starts to do what it needs to do, it starts purging toxins into your system to be fleshed out. You will feel worse. Please sit with it. get through it. It will get better, but if you keep running away from the pain, or the fear of the pain, or the fear of what's going to come back into your mind if you get clear-headed and stop, getting intoxicated all the time, that makes it worse. It starts to unleash because it needs to come out, and then you shut it down, and it just bounces all around inside and just damages everything energetically. And it will have a physical effect, and it absolutely lowers your vibration, and it absolutely affects your immune system, making you more susceptible to these illnesses. Because the illnesses, the bacteria, the viruses that go around, they have always been around. They weren't necessarily in their mutated forms yet, but they have been around this whole time. But it doesn't take hold because most people's immune systems are strong enough to withstand that. As it mutates and it gets stronger, it can take hold in more people. But really, what it's doing is it's exposing all the dysfunction of that person's immune system. What you don't realize is what affected that immune system to bring it into a state to be susceptible to that, especially on a fatal level. It's exposing how compromised that person's system was without anyone noticing. It's not, the symptoms of the illness are not the danger. The fact that the illness took hold is the danger. Things to increase your immune system. If you don't have the money, if you can't buy, the organic food, if you can't do all these things, as you change your energy, your alignment, your frequency, you can affect the things you are able to do. There are so many things you can do, like just literally playing around, getting in touch with that inner child where things were exciting and new and enjoyable, finding things that make you happy. And if you're having trouble with that, then think back to some of the earliest moments where even if what you remember first is all the bad things, think about what was it that you kept finding yourself doing that made you feel just a little bit better during those times. And look at whether there's a healthy dynamic in there or not. Some of that was we started eating, or some of us, we stopped eating. But other times it's like maybe you used to sit with an animal. Maybe you had a childhood pet. Maybe you had a certain thing, like maybe you had a stone, or a crystal, or a shell, or a blanket, or something tactile that you had that you used to like kind of soothe you to get through something. Expand upon that. If for the comfort things, expand upon the things that actually made you smile or laugh as a child. Give into that. Let yourself feel silly. Most of us that had these lives were not able to have a real childhood. Let yourself have that now. And if you have children now, especially if you're worried about your children and the way you've been behaving and how you might be affecting and damaging them, get in touch with your inner child and connect with your child through that. Play games together. Find a way to the healing by learning to discharge the fear. Start patterning more positive experiences. It'll be easier and easier to maintain if you remember that what you enjoy, and that you enjoy being with your children. And if you do not enjoy being with your children, please have at least the decency to try and find them outside help. They do not deserve what you're putting them through for not being wanted. And I'm guessing if you don't want your children, that you probably in your life felt mostly not wanted to. There is healing that needs to be done. Nobody should go through life not being able to feel wanted. And I didn't realize I was raised in a household that way. I've always known, whether or not I put it into words, I always knew I was not wanted. And that I'm learning to want to be myself. And now I'm finally learning there's other people that's been around my whole life, even if they didn't interact with me, that liked me for me the way I was. And they wanted me to be able to do that and continue. And they wanted to talk to me, but they were intimidated. Do the things you want to do. Talk to the person that you wanted to. Say, like, if you like something about somebody, like, hey, your eyes are really cool, just wanted you to know. Or, wow, your artwork is amazing. It makes me feel really good to see it or to hear it. Just go ahead and share that. Like, why not? Share the moments that bring you joy, but also feel that it's okay to share the moments that are really upsetting. It's okay. We need to talk about that. But yeah, it turns out some people do dwell on it. I didn't know that. Just because I talk about it, like, I don't dwell on it. I have so many other things going in and out of my mind that aren't even formed in words, and so many words that it's just, I don't dwell on anything other than possibly confusion. And then I try and go into it, and I try and understand it. I try and look at patterns. I try and look at dynamics. I try and see how what I'm seeing out there, does it relate to me? How is that going to help me if that situation comes up again or something like that? It's just, and I find that patterning and that puzzle enjoyable. I'm having fun with everything now. I'm laughing all the time, even when I'm crying. And it actually, I enjoy finally being able to allow myself to get angry and to feel sad and to finally start the grieving process. God, does it hurt? Oh my God, does it hurt? But it is so necessary, and it's getting more and more relieving as I go. So, oh, right, shit. So it's been like an hour, so I think I'm gonna cut that short. But I don't even know if I really stayed on topic. Whatever. It is what it is. Thanks so much for the people that popped in, and I'm curious to see if anyone has any thoughts from seeing this later, because I still don't understand how to tag people or like why I should or whatever. But anyways, those are my thoughts on that. Hopefully it was helpful on some level, or even just affirming for some people about like what they've been noticing too. It was just, anyways. But the synchronicities, the connections, it's getting cooler and cooler. I'm learning more about how to get out of my situation here in a better fashion, despite all the stuff that's happening legally and stuff against me. So I'm really excited, and just wanted to share this out there and hope everyone has a wonderful day, and that if things go rough or, you know, harsh, that I hope you can be gentle on yourself. Maybe reach out to another person, just to have a connection, whether you're talking about the thing that's upsetting you or not. Just finding that connection with someone is so healing. So I hope everyone just gets through this better and better. Rooting for all of you.